Hi everybody, it's Jen from Caketastic Cakes. This time I'm going to show you guys how to make Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. Doesn't he look awesome? This is a long one, so here we go. And don't forget, like and subscribe, please. Okay, going to start with his body. Get yourself a big old wad of black gum paste. However big you want his body to be, that's how big of a piece you're going to make. Okay, I am rolling him out. I didn't roll it out. I kind of smoothed him out with my hands. I'm kind of making him like a jelly bean shape or kidney bean shape, so he's curved around a little bit, and then bring the one end up. You can kind of see what I did there. You see how you kind of bring it around a little bit and up, and when you bring it up, you don't have to make it too narrow because his body and his neck and everything and his head are all pretty much the same width, the whole length of his main part of his body. As you can see, I just stuck a piece of a lollipop stick through. That's going to support his head later. These pieces are going to be his front legs. His legs are very much like aerobics workout people in the 80s. You know, you'd have like the real skinny legs, and then at the bottom you have the great big leg warmer poof that would stick out. It's pretty much the same thing here. His leg is going to be really, really thin from about the shoulder to the elbow, and then it's going to become very thick and kind of flare out at the bottom. And he doesn't have really defined paws or pads or anything. It just, his leg just kind of curves down and then goes flat into the ground. Okay, so when you get a size that you like and it looks pretty much like that, just stick it into place with a little bit of water. Okay, this is going to be his other leg. We're going to do the same exact thing all over again. So you're going to have it nice and thin at the top. You can really see it well and clearly here. And then pretty darn thick at the bottom. I'm going to have this paw overlapping the first one. So you're going to see it. Just matching them up to make sure they're the same length because that's always a good thing. And then take the paw and put the shoulder into place. The shoulders just blend right into the body. They don't stick out or anything like that. And fold the one on top of the other and just press it down so that it, folds down on top of the other one. You can see right there. Okay, so already, you're really starting to get the feel of how he's laying. He is going to be in a reclining position, laying with his head up, as you saw at the beginning there. We're going to make another leg. This is going to be the back leg. The back legs are made almost the same as the front. They're real skinny on the thigh part, and then they flare out at the bottom. The back legs are a little bit more like an elephant foot, though, at the bottom. So they kind of, I don't know, don't taper into the ground the way the front ones. They kind of spread out. Yeah. It's been a long day. Okay, you can see I'm bending it so he has a bit of a knee. And you can see I kind of flared out the bottom where the foot will be. And just find where you like it to sit and, again, put it into place. And there you go. You can see how it's coming along there. The other side, we're only going to have a little hint of a leg. So that little wedge in the middle there is the only piece we're going to use. It was a cylinder that I just cut at an angle real tight and short and trimmed it down until I found a length that I liked. And this is to give the impression that he's laying on that one back leg, that it's tucked under his body. You see? You see how that is there? Because the way he's laying, the body is curved inward, kind of cat-like. So you don't want all four of the feet sticking out. And since this is a super long video, and I know you're going to sit through every second of it, I'm going to fill in some of the more boring stuff with some of the little information and facts that I found out about Toothless. So yay, you're going to learn. Learning is fun. What is it? Knowledge is power? Is that what that CBS thing was, or whatever, on Saturday mornings? Anyway, this is his tail. Nice long tail. He's got a long tail, people, okay? Tapers off at the end. It doesn't get super skinny. He's not like that. He's a pretty chunky dragon. But his tail gets very long, and I press down with my rolling tool, or the fondant smoother, just to kind of make it a little flatter on top, because his tail is almost crocodilian, how it's flat with the two lines of ridges that go down it that we're going to be doing pretty soon. But we'll come back to that. And again, position the tail however you like, and then moving on. This is going to be his head. He has a very serpentine head. If imagine like a rattlesnake or any type of venomous snake, how they have the big wide cheek pouches and then the tapered snout. That's pretty much exactly what his head is like. It's very flat. It goes down at the nose and then goes up a little higher toward the back of the head. And it's very pointy in the front. I'm using my knife blade to go along the bottom edge there. This is going to be the outline for his mouth. His mouth is going to extend almost to the cheekbones, and his eyes are going to be above his mouth. They're not going to be set behind it or anything like that. So you got to make sure that his eyes, when you put them in, are front facing, or that his face faces forward enough that they will sit properly. This is some type of a veining tool, and I'm just using it to accent the mouth a little more, make it a little cleaner, a little more distinct. This is to make the eyes. I'm using my balling tool here. I don't know if that's the real name, but that's what I'm calling it. I'm calling it my balling tool. And I am pressing in and lifting up. I am having his expression be more kind of like an interest, a high eyebrow, like, ooh, what's that kind of a look? If you're not going to go for that look, if you want something more pensive or aggressive, then you want more oval and less round. But for now, my eyes are going pretty round. And like I said, I'm pushing up. You can kind of see right there to give him more of a lift to his eyebrows as well. And as I mentioned, the eyes are still above his mouth. He looks very much like a snake here, doesn't he? All right, I'm giving him 2 little nostrils with that veining tool again. And I realize, of course, after his face had hardened, that I gave him the wrong nose. It should be like a line instead of just the little dots. So don't make that mistake, guys. You can do better than me. And those lines I'm pressing in right there, those are actually more of what his nostrils should have been like. So I'm trying to accent his nose a little bit, make it more snooty by pressing down around it to make it stick out a little bit. You see what I'm talking about? How I'm kind of pressing down and smoothing out up to the eye socket, between the nostril and the eye socket, just to depress that area a little bit. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay, so here's your fun fact number 1. In the book, I learned that Toothless was like the size of an iguana, and he was green. He wasn't even black, and he wasn't big at all. And he was not a night fury. He was a common garden dragon. Okay, here are the eyes. I'm making them yellow. I know that they look green, and we're going to address that later, so don't worry about that. But your base color is going to be yellow, so stick with me on this one, all right? We'll make it look amazing pretty soon. Just fill in the socket with yellow. Don't have his eyes bulging out. Smooth down the edges. Fill it in nicely. That's all I'm doing with that round tool there. My ball tool. And now giving him his pupils. His pupils are basically hot dogs shaped. They're kind of reptilian or cat-like, the way they go up and down, but they're not as slanty or angular. They do kind of square and round off at the top and bottom. So maybe like goat eyes or sheep eyes, I guess you could say. So you want to keep that in mind. His eyes are only ever really skinny when he's in super aggressive or berserker mode, like in the second movie. Okay, so you got the one eye, you got the other eye, and there you go. Put those pupils in place, press him down, try to make him look like he's looking in the same direction. That'll help. See, isn't he cute? We'll just ignore the nose is wrong, but you guys will make it right, so it'll make my heart happy to imagine all the proper little noses out there. Okay, actually no, I didn't press his head into place yet, I don't think. I don't remember. I was kind of measuring it up. These are going to become his little mini fins that go right by his butt where his tail begins. And before we get too far into that, I want to add a side note with his head. His head should not be any wider than his neck. I ended up making it a little too big. So once again, learn from my mistakes. Okay? Okay, back to the tail, the butt fins. We're going to call them butt fins because I just like saying butt fin. All right, I made a circle. I cut it in half, as you could see. I just kind of matched it up to get an idea of the size. Those were those marks I was making. And then you could trim it out. It's basically triangle shaped, as you can see here. I'm using that veining tool again to press down. I'm pressing down where I want the veins of his butt fin to not be. So now I'm using my ball tool to make those grooves that I made wider. Don't press too hard because you'll end up ripping or snagging your gum paste, which is terrible, and I ended up doing it later when I made the wings. So yes, you're learning all kinds of things from my mistakes today, guys. All right, so you can see I'm pressing it down in a lot of areas, and it was super long and boring, so I cut it. But there you go. You can see I made the veins much thinner. That'll stand up, the ridges or whatever you want to call them. Trim it to make it nice and thin. I'm using one of my circle cutters, just whatever I felt like fit the size, to trim it out and kind of give it that webbed look between the veins. And then I put it up to the butt and realized, whoa, that butt fin is way too big. So I took the circle cutter and I trimmed it down even shorter. Trim it shorter, yes. Now he has a proper looking butt fin. And I don't care, I'm just going to keep saying butt fin because it's fun. I like it. Okay, using my little tool, a little bit of water, press it into place, and it's going to have to bend around and follow the tail if you have it bendy like I did, which is fine, you know, it can bend. Oh, so yeah, here's the other one. You're taking the other piece, again, trim it off, match it up to the other size if you want to make it easier for yourself. There are those lines that I'm putting in, and those are going to become the flat part of the web part of his butt fin. And the raised parts are going to stay the ridges in the fin. And so I'm going to press it down a little more and make sure it looks beautiful. And that part wasn't beautiful, so I went back to do it again. I'm just including that so you all see how meticulous and careful and detail-oriented I am, and not that I just forgot to make this part of the video shorter or anything. And you can also see, too, when I'm doing this with the ball tool that I'm pulling it out and down. It really, it'll really show up better too in the wings where it's a little bigger, but it kind of gives it more of the webbed feel. I think anyway, it certainly helps with the look of it. So again, just be nice and gentle. Don't pull too hard because you'll rip it and snag it, and that'll make you want to swear. And we don't need that. So yeah, avoid it if you can. Okay, trim it off to the right size because you got to have even butt fins. Otherwise you fly in circles. Using your tool, a little bit of water, press it into place, follow the tail around. Tra-la-la-la. There you go. There's a little Captain Underpants reference for you guys, too. I'm all up in the kids' cartoons and comics, and I'm sorry, graphic novels these days. All right, we're taking a nice thin piece of black, trim it down nice and skinny. Just ignore the little wobble there. And start cutting little zigzags like you're making shark teeth or something like that. These are going to be the spiky ridges that he has going down his back and his head and his tail. This one in particular is going to be for his tail. So you didn't need to see me do the whole darn thing. It was super long and boring. You guys know how to make little wedges. The only key or trick that you have to be aware of, and for the other ones as well, is when you do it, start off big on one end and gradually taper down so it gets smaller toward the other end. Because when it goes down his tail, those ridges do get smaller in size. And you can see right there it broke. Oh no, what am I going to do? It's not a problem. I'll just stick it on anyway. If something like that happens, it's not a big deal. Most of the time, if something breaks or gets damaged or whatever, it is fixable. So don't freak out. Don't panic. You know, if you just hide it with a decoration or something like this. In this case, it's easy. You just matched it back up, but it's okay. You know, these things happen, and you're being paid or you're doing this because you can, and other people have faith in you to do it too. So don't let things like that ruin it for you. Okay, there you go. One side of his tail has his spikiness, and we're just going to do the same exact thing on the other side. So yeah, okay. And getting back to our dragon trivia, there are 12 How to Train Your Dragon books, and they're not called How to Train Your Dragon. And Hiccup doesn't even have a girlfriend in it. Astrid doesn't even exist, which I was a little surprised to find out. And Toothless is named Toothless because he has no teeth, just like in the movie, except in the book he actually has like no teeth. I think in one of them he grows a tooth and then it just falls out. But his gums are super hard that he can still chew without actually having any teeth. So yeah, there you go. You're learning all kinds of useless information today. I don't know if you saw, but the end of his tail, my spikes were too short. Again, not a big deal. So I just rolled out a little more gum paste, trimmed it out. This was toward the end of the tail, so they're nice and small. And then stick them into place, and you will never even know the difference. So I'm just showing you these little things and telling you about them because they will come up. And when they do, it's not a big deal. You can fix it. It's frustrating, absolutely. Don't get me wrong there, but you can do it. All right, these are his main, I guess, ears. I guess they're his ears. He kind of just has, as you can see, the flat, rounded gravestone-looking ear thing. I'm using a little piece of dried spaghetti to shove it into his head and then plop that ear down it onto place. And there you go. Now he looks like a bunny rabbit. And we don't want him to look like a bunny rabbit, so we need to fix that. He is very cute, though, I gotta say. I was happy with him. His ears are more devil horny, so you're going to pinch them and bend them toward the center and kind of flare him out a little bit at the curve. So you see what I mean, what I did there. He's not quite so bunny rabbity, or maybe you'd think he's more bunny rabbity. I don't know. But either way, they're not little gravestones anymore. You can't say that. These are going to be more of the little horn things he's got on his head. He's got two that go between his bunny ears. So again, two more little sticks of spaghetti. Stick them into place. Hindsight, I really should have done these center ones first because I was struggling not to get the big bunny ear parts in the way and knock them or mess them up. They're follow the same kind of shape as well. They kind of taper and bend inward a little bit. See, there we go. But what you didn't see me do is I ended up having to take off one of them in order to fit the middle pieces in because I just couldn't do it. These are going to be more of his facial things, his facial horns or whatever those little things are that stick out on his cheeks and the top of his head. He's got two main ones on each side of his cheeks. He's got a bigger one and a smaller one. And they both kind of follow the same design as the ones on top of his head. They taper, see, like that, kind of like a bear claw or toenail, you know, something like that. How it just kind of tapers and curves upward. Okay, so don't make them too thick. The one starts at his cheek, the other one goes a little bit higher, more behind his eye. You can see kind of right there. I'm using the small ball on my ball tool to just press the edge of it in a little bit more, just to make sure it's really anchored and try to blend it a little bit, because my blending skills are kind of lousy. But there you go. You can see how he's looking more toothlessy. Same thing on the other side again, with his two little cheek horns or whatever those things are. Make sure you make them so that they taper up, stick them into place, la la la, there you go. There's the second one, yes. Okay, so another thing I learned from the dragon book is that Toothless was not actually a garden dragon. He was a sea dragon, and he was supposed to be the type that's like the largest and the most powerful and everything else. And the kids would go out and get a dragon in the books, that it's like everybody had a dragon and they were basically slaves. Doesn't he look good? Because they were very intelligent, but they were all small. So the Vikings, being big and strong, would just overpower them and then kind of force them to do whatever the heck they wanted. So yeah, little spin on things. This is going to be his little head ridge that he has. It only goes about halfway down his head, the center of his forehead. I just rolled it real thin, as you saw me do, just a thin little noodle of gum paste. Using the back of my knife blade, I'm just pressing wedges into it to give the idea of the ridging. And the ones on his head are super tiny, so you could do them individually. More power to you, just don't make them too big. Okay, we are going to be making more ridges. Yay! These are going to be going down his back. These are going to be a little bit bigger, and you're going to cut them a little differently too. When you cut them, cut straight down toward the bottom part, and then your second angle, when you cut the wedge out, should be more at an angle, if you know what I mean. More like a saw blade. You know how it's not just straight triangles, it's actually at an angle. Because his spikes on his back curve downward. They curve down his back. So you're going to see me after I place it with water. And again, it goes bigger at the top and then tapers down when it reaches his tail. Just kind of a different design, but because I was like, how the heck does one go into two? I didn't know if it forked or what when it hit his butt. But it just kind of merged into it. It just doubled down to nothing. So yeah, there you go. Okay, you're going to see me do it in a moment. I'm going to kind of brush my fingers like I'm petting him down his spines on his back, and that's causing them to curve over a little bit. Ah, nice Toothless. See? Like that. Okay? And that will give them the curve that they need. I never understood this, but how the heck do you ride a dragon with a saddle when he's got back spines like that? Like, do they smush the spines? I just never understood that. I think about silly things sometimes. All right, we are going to be doing the little spiky things on his legs now. 3 little triangles or tooth shapes pieces or whatever you want to call them there. Just bend them over, hook them over gently. Don't make them too big, and you're going to put 3 on each foreleg, on the bottom of each foreleg. See, there's 1, and then I'm attaching them with water. I'm just trying to move it along here. Here's the second one, and there's the third one. There you go. And these do also curve downward, so these, instead of curving up toward his head, the curve goes down toward the bottom of the paw. And here's the same thing on the other leg. We're going to do 3 of them again. 3 of your little tooth-shaped pieces for our toothless dragon. There's 1. There's 2. And come on, 3. There you go. There's 3. There you go. See? And we're going to do his claws too, so don't worry about that. But he's just adding those little spiky things and stuff to him really makes a difference. Okay, same thing to the back leg. I think I added 3. I had a hard time getting them on, but it was the same idea. These are his toenails. 3 toenails. It's actually a mixture of brown and black because they're not quite black in the pictures I was looking at. But you just make yourself some claws, like any type of stereotypical rawr bear claws, dragon claws. I've got claws. So the 3 claws go on the top. I just did 1 on the bottom, just like that, because the way his front paw is, the top paw is covered by the bottom paw, or is covering, the bottom paw. You're not going to see them all, so I saved myself a little effort here. And you see how I'm lifting him up, and he's all nice and hard and stiff. I had to let his body and his tail dry for overnight. So keep that in mind. This guy took time to make. He was not I'm just going to freaking bust out a Toothless. This guy took time, and it was fun but challenging and all of the above. He was a roller coaster of emotion. This thick pancake of black I'm smushing with my finger is going to become his wings. His wings gave me the most trouble out of any part of his body, and if any of you guys have a better way to do it, I would love to hear it, as I end up making these wings, and then you fold them up and put them on the body, and then they go because they're soft, and they just mush, which is why in the intro picture, and at the end you're going to see too, his wings are not exactly the most firm and fierce-looking wings you've ever seen. But anyway, okay, so I'm using my fingers just basically to do what I did with a veining tool. I'm just pressing down, whole lot of ridges. I was not following any specific guideline of, Toothless has exactly 3 veins in the outer part of his wing. I just did a whole bunch of lines and thought it looked cool. It gives it more of a leathery look when you add a whole bunch of the little different lines and marks into it. And again, I'm pressing with that ball tool. This one I was safe. The next one I think it was, I ended up ripping and snagging. Please don't press too hard. Don't be a Jen. Don't press too hard and rip and snag your dragon wings. Okay, so just keep pressing and pulling and focus in so that you end up isolating little lines that will stay elevated, and those will become the veins of the wing. You see right there, I pulled a little too hard, but I was able to smooth it out. Okay, so that way he has the main veins that support the wing frame or the webbing. And that's what I'm doing right there. I pulled too hard too. What am I doing? But like I said before, even little mistakes like that's not too big of a deal because his wings are going to be folded up on himself, so you're not going to really see it anyway. Or maybe you just say it's a battle scar or something. So yeah. Oh, okay. Here's another fact for you guys. in the How to Train Your Dragon books, the dragons, some of them can actually speak the Viking language if they choose to. Like dragons like Toothless can. He's just super stubborn and doesn't listen to anybody. So he just doesn't. And Hiccup in the book is one of the very, very few people who can actually speak to the dragons. So there you go. He's special and unique. There's his superpower. Okay, I trimmed it down a lot just because his wing was ridiculously big by the time I pulled and smoothed and stretched it all out. I'm going to be doing the back side of him first because it was the first wing and I probably felt like it would be the worst wing. The first time you make something, or at least for me, is always the worst because you're always figuring it out. If I were to make him again, it would be so much better. But yeah, he was the first Toothless I made and I did have fun doing it. So yeah, okay. Can't really see it, but I'm trying to fold it up, try to make it look like his wings are laying down. So that's what I'm trying to show you right there. And once you get it folded up enough, then you're going to place him against his body and just press it down into place with some water. The wings are kind of heavy. I tried using pieces of paper towel and rolling them up and folding the wing over it to try to hold it out a little bit better. It did help, but it didn't, save the day or solve all the problems. You can see how it's kind of laying there. And then I had the problem where the wings go down his back and they were covering up his butt fins. And after I'd spent all that time on the butt fin, I didn't want to hide it. So I wanted the wings to be out a little bit too. So I had all kinds of wing complications to overcome. So there's the paper towel, like I told you. I stuck it in there to try to hold it out a little bit and give it more of a stiff shape. All right, so wing number 1 is done. Now we've got wing number 2. Yay, wings. Same thing as before. Lay out your pancake. It can be, it doesn't have to be too skinny because you're going to press and pull, and you're going to trim away all the excess anyway. So you can make it as thin as you need. And just like before, just pulling it out, getting the general idea of it. So it's no big deal. Okay. And here's another thing I learned. When the movie designers were making the character for Toothless, see, I pressed too hard and ripped it. Way to go, me. Yep, pinch it shut. They were referencing animals that kids were familiar with. They wanted the kids to be able to relate to the dragon. So they based his motions and behaviors and everything off of cats and dogs, and specifically I think if they said Black Panthers, with how he was moving and how, he kind of slinks around and that kind of thing. And his huffy attitude and spinning in a circle before he lays down. All those little things. Just so kids would be able to, unconsciously kind of relate and understand him and not be nervous of him. Which I thought was kind of neat. And he makes a way cooler dragon than a little green iguana-sized one. All right, here's wing number 2. You see how I trimmed it down, took all the chunks out, made it so it would fit against his body. Here I am trying to put it into place. It's laying over his back leg, which I put all that effort into. So I didn't want it to cover the back leg. I didn't want it to cover his butt fin. I had all kinds of issues with these darn wings. I liked how he came out so much, and then I lost so much of it behind his wings. So yeah, again, if you guys figured that part out too, let me know. All right, this little shape I'm making right here, kind of a diamond shape, is that I just took a nip off of. That's going to be his one tail fin. His fin is kind of kite-shaped, but then you're going to cut the one corner of your kite off, and then using your circle cutter, you're going to take two little nips out, just like I did there. Then using a smaller cutter at the bottom, 2 little nips, so they kind of match, and then you're going to do one on the side. Or did I do 2? I don't remember. Let's find out. There's 1 and 2. I did do 2. So you go 2, 2, 2, and then flat. And you're probably thinking this looks really weird, but it's allowed to, because the top one is going to be the vein, and you see I'm using the veining tool to press between them. So those tips are going to be where it stays high, and you're going to press down in between there, okay? So once you get all your little pressing and everything done, use some water, push it against the tail, And do the same thing on the other side with red. This is where Hiccup fixed his tail so he could fly. I don't think in the book he was ever injured like that. Yeah, he wasn't. They just, like I said before, the kids would have to go out and catch a dragon to make it theirs. And he ended up with Toothless. Hiccup, excuse me, ended up with Toothless. And he was never injured or anything like that. He was just stubborn and ornery and small and easily overlooked. And nobody realized he was going to grow up to be one of the biggest, strongest dragons ever, or something. So anyway, same idea as the other side. You're going to have the piece of red, bring it down. I ended up doing the circles after the fact. I have no idea why. I'm just realizing this as I'm watching it. I think probably because I was so tired of making a Toothless and his tail fin at this point. I was probably still traumatized from the wings. I wasn't thinking straight. So you're going to have 4 main veins on this one. Oh yeah, here I am. I'm trying to nip it out now that it's already been done. Too late, me. But anyway, like I was saying, you're going to have, I think, 4 main, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 4 main parts that come out. So once you get it attached, you got to make sure it's the same size as the black part. So double check it. Okay, so it's the same size and doesn't look weird. Press it into place. And then forget all about it and go on to get brown. Brown is going to be the straps that's going to hold his tail fin in place. So I just laid it across the top of his tail. Thin little strip. Pushed it down with a little bit of water to hold in place. And trim off the extra. You don't have to go all the way around. I just went between a couple of the spikes on either side of the tail. So even though it looks weird at this angle, it actually did work out. It was okay. Now I'm adding little gray dots to the end of the red side because Hiccup built it and it's got metal pieces on the end of the fabric. So just little gray dots. Little gray dot, 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 dot. There you go, 4. It's like I knew what I was talking about. Okay, now I'm going to add the scale patches that he has. I'm just using a black edible food coloring marker. And I'm just dotting him up. I suppose you could do, I don't know, if you have some type of a pattern, some way to make a pattern on some really thin pieces that you could lay over top, you could try that. But this worked pretty well. Like if you see pictures of him, the scales that stand out like that on his 4 paws and on his face are shiny. They're very shiny and iridescent, and because it is food coloring, even though it dries, it retains that shininess. So I kind of liked how it worked out. I was pretty happy with it. If you guys have a better way or think of something that works, I would love to hear it. You can let me know in the comments. And I'm just dotting up his legs. His front legs are pretty heavily dotted. It goes up his elbows onto his forearm or upper arms a little bit. He's got lots on his nose. All over his nose. nose. And it also goes up his head and kind of follows the ridge, that short little ridge of spikes he's got on his head there. It is heavily or more heavily dotted on the left side of his face than the right. I don't know why, but the way he is animated, he is not perfectly symmetrical. So I don't think any child who you would make this for would ever notice, but it's something that I noticed, so I'm just putting it out there for you. All right, the dots kind of follow the ridge of his skull, so it goes up around his eyes, up to the back of his head, and then up onto his bunny ears and his other little ears a little bit. Okay, so there you go, bunny ears, dot, dot, dot. Okay. So here's another little fact for you as I'm dotting away. In the books, Toothless liked to sleep inside of Hiccup's coat. He would put him up inside of it where it was nice and warm up against his body, and he ended up liking it there. Because in the books, dragons hibernate. So there you go. Look at those dots. He looks pretty cool. I really had fun making him, and I was pretty happy with how he came out. You know, like I said, the first one is always the worst. But for being the worst, he's not too bad. And if you guys can improve upon these guidelines, that would be great. If you figure out some of those little things that I've mentioned on how to get around it, that would be wonderful if you shared it. Okay. I dotted up his back leg, his front legs, his bunny ears, his face, and he really looks cool like that. I was really happy with him. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I colored in his eye. I know his eyes are more green, but they've got kind of that yellow undertone, which is why I said to use the yellow. I'm taking two different shades of green food coloring. I've got a Kelly green and a moss green. And using the moss green, do the outside, the outermost edge of his eyes in the darkest green. Do the lighter green toward the center, but leave near his pupil a little bit of yellow. Let it peek through a little bit. It's hard to see at this angle, but you can kind of see it there. Yes, you can definitely see it there. You see what I mean? How this way you're giving his eyes shading. And I used a little bit of water on the paintbrush, and then I went back over and kind of blended everything together. So that way his eye now is just kind of a myriad of green and yellow. I'm using just plain old black food coloring to paint the pupil. I wanted his eyes to be wet and shiny and bright, so that's why I'm doing this. The same idea with the dots of his scales. It'll just make them shine and stand out more and give him a little bit more of the realistic look, since his eyes are one of the most expressive parts, if not the most expressive of his face. And you can see just the shading and everything. It really comes out nice. So now we're putting him aside. I've got a little piece of green. I rolled it out into, it looks like a Swedish fish, you know, the candies. And that's pretty much exactly what I'm making. I'm just making a little fish for him to have in front of him that he's looking at, because I mentioned I had his expression all perky and interested. So this was why he gets to see a fish, and he's going to eat it. So I took my little, you know, Swedish fish shape, smushed down a tail, pressed down the top to make a back fin, trim off the little bit that sticks out too much. You guys can skip this part if you want. You know, he doesn't need to have a fish. I just threw it in because I just thought it would be cute. I'm using my knife just to make some ridges in the top fin and the tail. Chop, chop, chop. And I ended up chopping too much onto the body, so I just kind of pressed it down a little bit there. I'm using the knife again to put a little X on his eye because he's a dead fish. I used the tip of the veining tool to split the mouth, just to give him a little fishy mouth. Little circle cutter, give him some gills. Smush down on the belly, give him a little belly fin. Ichthyology was too long ago, so I don't remember my parts of the fish anymore. Let's see, is that a pectoral fin? I think it's a pectoral. He doesn't have pelvic fins, so he's not an anatomically correct fish. I'm using the tip of the tool just to put marks in him, make it look kind of like scales. There you go, little fish. Yay, fishy. Then I took some shimmer that I had. I just happened to have some green. Oh, my bad. First I sprayed him silver. I don't even remember what I did anymore. And then put him aside to let him dry. This is pink. It looks like skin color or something, but it's actually just very, very, very light pink. I made a tiny circle, cut it in half, cut a little niche out of it, like you'd imagine a little snake tongue or something like that. Then I realized it's kind of uneven, so I'm going to trim it off, make it a little more even. And then I realized it was too long, so I trimmed it off. So it basically just have the little forked part of the tongue, and that was it. Okay, so once you get a good size for the tongue and you like the width of it and the thickness and everything, stick it wherever you want. All right, there you go. Now he's licking his lips. He sees his fish. He's ready to eat. His eyes look good. There we go. Now we can see it. And you're ready to go. Put a little dot of white on each eye. I'm using the back of my paintbrush, I believe it is, to give a little highlight to his eyes right on the pupil there. And you can see his tongue. You can see his eyes. A little bit of a pink blush dust, it's shimmer on his tongue. A little bit of shimmer on the fish. Whoops, a little green there, went too crazy. And just brush it off, just shimmer. I'm just going over the fins a little bit. using some white food coloring, paint a little symbol on the tail, whatever the symbol was. It's like a face of some sort. So that's kind of what I'm painting. It's not supposed to be a happy face, but that's kind of what it looks like, isn't it? But there you go. He's done. He looks super cool. Subscribe. Check out my other videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll check you all next time.